Bindi is doing so much better now. So things like a lot of travel are a bit challenging for her at the moment. And so she'll be here next year to celebrate this wonderful night.
Steve Irwin spent his life protecting his daughter from everything. Snakes, crocodiles, cameras, headlines. 20 years after his death, the one thing he could not protect her from finally broke his wife and son in public. Terri could not finish her sentence. Robert turned away from the camera and went silent. And what Bindi has been hiding from the world is the exact thing Steve told Terri to watch for the night before he died. The Vegas carpet where everything came undone happened on a warm Saturday evening in early May of 2026, inside the gilded ballroom of the Bellagio Resort and Casino. The third annual Steve Irwin Gala had transformed one of the most iconic venues on the Strip into a slice of the Australian outback, with khaki tablecloths, ambassador animals roaming through the crowd, and Australian comedian Rove McManus warming up the room as master of ceremonies. The entire ballroom was packed shoulder to shoulder with conservation donors, Hollywood friends, and members of Robert Irwin's freshly minted Dancing with the Stars family. For the second year in a row, however, one chair at the family table sat empty. Bindi Irwin was nowhere to be seen. Her absence rippled through the ballroom before the first course was even served. When Robert and Terri finally walked the carpet together, every reporter pressed them for the same answer. Terri spoke first, her voice gentle and a little tired from the long flight and from Brisbane. She told E! News that Bindi was doing so much better now, but that travel had become a real challenge for her at this particular moment in her recovery. She promised the room that her daughter would absolutely be there next year to celebrate this wonderful evening, but for now, she was simply staying close to home. Then came the line that lit up social media within hours of the gala ending. Terri smiled with a kind of knowing weariness and said it was actually less taxing for Bindi to be home feeding crocodiles than to make the journey to Las Vegas. That single sentence carried more weight than anyone in the room realized at first hearing. To understand why that one comment mattered so much, you have to know what feeding crocodiles actually means at Australia Zoo. The Crocoseum is a 5,500-seat amphitheater built by Steve Irwin himself, the same arena where his memorial was held back in 2006. We are talking about a young woman who would rather wrangle a 14-foot saltwater crocodile in front of a live audience than board a long-haul flight to Nevada. Robert immediately stepped in to fill out the picture. He reminded everyone that Australia Zoo runs with a team of around 500 staff members across roughly 500,000 acres of conservation land. Someone had to hold down the fort while the rest of the family flew abroad, and his sister was doing a tremendous job in that role. He delivered the line with a proud smile, but there was something underneath the smile that the reporters could feel without him having to spell it out. The truth is that Bindi has spent more than a decade fighting a battle that most people watching that gala would never have guessed at. Her recovery is genuine, but it is fragile, and the family has been navigating a delicate balance between celebrating her healing and protecting her from anything that might set her back. The reason Terri described travel as challenging was not a casual phrase chosen for the cameras. It was a careful summary of years of medical history that have shaped the entire Irwin family's life behind the scenes. And that history is exactly where this story turns next. Bindi first went public with her diagnosis of endometriosis back in March of 2023, sharing a hospital bed photograph on Instagram and writing about more than 10 years of tests, doctor visits, and scans without answers. That first surgery in New York with celebrated specialist Dr. Tamer Sekin removed 37 endometriosis lesions and a chocolate cyst that was actually attaching her ovary to her side. Endometriosis, however, does not work that way. It is chronic, it returns, and in the spring of 2025 it returned with a vengeance. On the very night of the second annual Steve Irwin Gala in Las Vegas, Bindi was supposed to be standing on that same Bellagio carpet next to her brother and mother. Then everything fell apart in the space of a few hours. Robert later told People magazine that his sister had tried to push through the pain and attend the gala anyway, but the surgeon told her plainly that her appendix had to come out immediately and her health had to come first. Bindi flew straight from Las Vegas to New York for emergency surgery. Less than an hour after the procedure ended, she filmed a video from her hospital bed for her followers, telling them that her appendix had been removed, 14 new endometriosis lesions had been excised, and a hernia from giving birth to her daughter had finally been stitched up. By the time the dust settled across 2 surgeries, the medical math was nothing short of staggering. 51 endometriosis lesions were removed in total, a chocolate cyst, an appendix, and a postpartum hernia were repaired. By August of 2025, she finally felt strong enough to share genuinely good news with her followers, writing that she could function in everyday life again without wanting to throw up or pass out from the pain. She was, in her own words, beginning to recognize herself again. That recovery is the recovery Terri was protecting when she chose to leave Bindi at home in 2026. And the next chapter of the gala carpet is where the family's tears really started to flow. After Terri delivered her health update, the conversation pivoted to something lighter. Reporters wanted to know about a running family joke that had been circulating for months. Robert had reportedly started a petition to get his mother onto the next season of Dancing with the Stars, and the question was whether Terri was actually going to do it. Terri leaned into the microphone with a perfectly timed deadpan and told the reporter she would review the petition and get back to them in 5 to 7 business days. The carpet erupted in laughter. Robert grinned beside her with the look of a son who had been planning this exact bit for weeks. He had told The Hollywood Reporter back in early December of 2025 that he had personally launched the petition and that his mother was firmly refusing to do it. He cheerfully added that he was going to wear her down no matter how long it took. Robert pointed out that he had not known he could dance, and Bindi had not known she could dance, yet both of them had managed to do well on the show. Those dancing genes, he insisted, had to come from somewhere. He joked that his father Steve had been an athletic man with absolutely no rhythm whatsoever, which meant the dancing must have come from the maternal side. Then Terri's expression softened on the carpet, and the joke became something deeper. She admitted that she felt honored to even be asked. She said she remembered Bindi describing the experience of dancing on that show as the closest thing to flying she had ever felt, that it was euphoric and free in a way that nothing else in her life had ever been. Robert, sensing his moment, leaned closer and promised the cameras that he was going to make it happen on the next season no matter what it took. What nobody on the carpet realized was that this petition had its real roots in a moment that had taken place months earlier in a Los Angeles ballroom. Rewind to mid-October of 2025, to week 5 of the 34th season of Dancing with the Stars. The episode was titled Dedication Night, and every celebrity on the show was asked to perform a routine in honor of someone meaningful in their life. Robert chose his mother. He sat on the couch and tried to speak through his tears. He told the camera that his mother was an absolute hero to him because he had been just 2 years old when his father died. As he had grown up, he had begun to understand how unimaginably hard it must have been for her to stand strong for her 2 children while carrying on the conservation legacy she and Steve had built together. At every milestone where he wished his father could be there, his mother had been there instead. He danced a contemporary routine to the Phil Collins song from the Tarzan soundtrack, and at the climax, Terri walked onto the floor in a yellow dress. Robert lifted her, twirled her, and collapsed into her arms as the music swelled. The judges wept openly. Bruno Tonioli told Robert his father was looking down and smiling. The score was 35 out of 40, but the real moment came in the rehearsal footage when Terri herself broke down on camera. She told producers that after losing Steve, it had been difficult to smile again for a very long time. She said that for Robert to tell her she had lifted him up was actually backwards in her mind, because the truth was that her 2 children were the reason she had been able to get up every morning at all. And the next dance Robert performed only deepened that bond. A few weeks after dedication night came the 20th anniversary episode of the show, which aired in mid-November. Each couple was assigned a routine inspired by an iconic mirrorball winning performance. Robert and his professional partner Whitney Carson drew Bindi's own freestyle from her season 21 victory back in 2015, the foxtrot to the Leona Lewis song Footprints in the Sand, which Bindi had originally dedicated to her late father. The weight of the assignment was immense. When the foxtrot finally aired, Bindi herself walked onto the dance floor at the conclusion of the routine and joined her brother and Whitney in a 3-way embrace. As they held hands, projected images of Steve Irwin holding a baby Robert filled the floor beneath their feet. Robert dropped to his knees in the middle of the ballroom, completely overcome. The judges gave the performance the very first perfect score of the entire season, a clean 40 out of 40. Bruno Tonioli called it a poetic and touching tribute and said Robert had received the royal seal of approval, a clever reference to a video message that Prince William had recorded for Robert that very same night. Derek Hoff, choking up at his table, called Robert this generation's beacon of joy. Tom Bergeron, the original host of the show during Bindi's victorious season a decade earlier, told Robert that he had grown into a true star. In his confessional after the dance, Robert admitted that he had not known the footage of his father would appear at the end of the routine, and that every time he stepped onto that floor, he carried his father's message with him. The performance set the stage for what would become one of the most watched finales in the show's recent history. And the journey from that dance floor to the Mirrorball Trophy was about to test his body in ways nobody saw coming. By the time the finale rolled around in late November of 2025, Robert was running on absolute fumes. Whitney revealed that the pair were close to falling apart after 11 punishing weeks of rehearsals. Robert had developed a serious rib injury that made every breath painful. Whitney took on a maternal role and made the choice to remove a lift from their freestyle that was simply wrecking their body. The finale unfolded across 3 rounds. They opened with a judge's choice quickstep to a rock song by the Australian band Jet, score a perfect 30 out of 30 on an instant cha-cha, and closed the night with a freestyle blending the songs Black and Gold by Sam Sparrow and The Nights by Avicii. When Alfonso Ribeiro and Julian Hough finally announced his name as the winner, Robert immediately grabbed the microphone and told the crowd that his sister had said it best when she had told him that the show would change his life forever. The numbers behind the win were historic. The finale drew more than 9 million viewers, making it the highest entertainment broadcast since the Oscars that year. Voting reached 72 million ballots, doubling the previous year's totals. Robert became the youngest male winner the show had ever produced. He and Bindi together became the very first pair of siblings ever to both hold Mirrorball trophies in the show's entire history. Terri, Bindi, Chandler Powell, and 4-year-old Grace Warrior were all in the audience when the announcement came. Terri's Instagram post that night has since become a kind of family scripture among Irwin fans. She thanked Robert for his passion and his kind heart, told Whitney that she was now officially part of the family, and reminded the world that even a zookeeper could learn how to dance. And 4 months later, in the gilded ballroom of the Bellagio, all of that pride would come pouring back out in front of cameras one more time. Back on the carpet at the Vegas Gala, reporters from Access Hollywood asked Robert and Terri the question that has hovered over the family for 2 decades. What would Steve Irwin think if he could see all of this with his own eyes? Terri's answer was vintage Terri, sharp and a little wry. She said that Steve would be amazed they were in Vegas of all places. She pointed out that people often forget how philanthropic this city actually is, because the reputation has always been about what happens here staying here. She said the work being done in Las Vegas for humanitarian aid and conservation rippled out around the entire world. Robert's response was the line that has been clipped and replayed across every entertainment website in the world. He said it was interesting to him how every single day a stranger came up to him to share a story about how his father had inspired them. The fact that 20 years on his father's message was being felt stronger than ever showed 2 things at once. It showed what an incredibly powerful and unifying figure his father had been and remained, and it showed what an incredibly strong individual it had taken to keep that legacy alive all these years. He gave full credit for that strength to his mother standing beside him. Terri then offered up the perfect comic punctuation that broke the mood and made the whole carpet laugh. She told the reporters that the one thing Robert had which Steve never did was a willingness to take his shirt off for wildlife. Underneath the laughter, however, was the longer arc of grief that the family has carried. Terri admitted that the road from 2006 to that very stage had been a great deal of work and a great deal of grief, but that it had also held times of tremendous joy. And there is one date already circled on the calendar that will test that joy all over again. Just 4 months after the May Gala in Las Vegas, the Irwin family will mark 20 years to the day since Steve Irwin was killed by a stingray barb at Bat Reef on the 4th of September in 2006. The whole conservation world knows the anniversary is coming. The whole family knows. Robert had previewed his deeper feelings about that grief earlier in the year on a CNN podcast hosted by Anderson Cooper. He told Cooper that he feels closest to his father when he is in the middle of nowhere on a crocodile expedition, when a kind of warmth wraps itself around him without warning. He distinguished his own grief from his sister's with rare candor, saying that Bindi had so much more time with their father than he did, which made her grief feel like a stab while his felt like a suffocating blanket. He told Cooper about a moment on his very first crocodile research expedition in northern Australia, when he caught a massive saltwater crocodile only to discover it had been previously tagged by his own father years earlier. He described it as an unmistakable sign that his dad was still with him. Robert ended his comments at the Vegas Gala by repeating the same hopeful message he had delivered on the dance floor and at every public event since the win. He said keeping that sense of passion and positivity and philanthropy and conservation alive was not only an honor for him personally, but also something he believed was absolutely crucial for the next generation. With his mother beside him, his sister recovering at home, and his niece growing up surrounded by the family's khaki uniform, the crocodile hunter's voice still echoes through the Crocoseum every single day. What did you take away from their words about her recovery, and do you think Terri will finally say yes to Dancing with the Stars next season? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.